Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. As promised, we have an exciting guest on this week. We kept saying that and kept saying it'll be next week. So today we have Joe Inglis on from Biome9. I'm sure everybody has seen that advertised at the moment. I think if you've got an account on Instagram for your dog, you can't get away from it.
There's no escaping it.
Yeah. So
friends
Joe,
of mine have said, I'm so fed up with seeing your face.
So am I right, Joe? You've been a vet for, is it 30 years now?
Oh God, yeah,
Yeah?
Not quite. No, I qualified in 1996. So,
right, okay, well,
not
nearly.
quite that long. I haven't been a practicing vet for quite a long time. So I've been more in pet nutrition, working in various pet food companies.
Yeah.
So I've set up a few over the years, and,
Yes.
and I currently work at one as well as Biome9. But yeah, I've had a real fascination of all things pet nutrition for all of my career.
Yeah, and well, yeah, especially you would have seen so much over your years as well. We also, a lot of people might know you from being on the TV quite a lot as well.
Yeah, not so much recently. I haven't done so much of that recently, but yeah, obviously people with long memories will remember Vets in Practice back in the 90s.
Yeah, I do.
So that was good fun. And then I did various things, so Blue Peter and The One Show and various things. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and it was great to kind of use that as a platform to spread positive messages about pet welfare and health and things.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's just great how just even dog owners are taking so much more interest now, and I think it can be a curse as well because everyone's asking so many questions. But it's good, isn't it? People are much more aware now of.
If you think of how far our dogs have come, or our relationships with our dogs over the last 50, 60 years or whatever, from being kind of dogs that would be, out living outside and fed on scraps and having a very distant relationship. And now, a lot of our dogs share our beds, share our lives, share some of our food. And actually that boils down to we probably share a lot more than that. Bring us onto the microbiome.
Yes.
We probably share an awful lot of what goes on inside of those dogs.
Yes, well, yeah, that leads us into our question. So I'll throw over to Anna.
Hello. I was going to just ask, who are Biome9? Could you just tell us a little bit about who you are, how it got started, and where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So the Biome9 is a company that's been sort of in development for probably 4 or 5 years in various guises. It's kind of morphed over that period of time. But really, a lot of that time has been spent on a research, trying to understand the science of the gut microbiome and develop that and get it to a place where it's ready to have a product and a service that's helpful for dog parents to use. So it was founded by a couple of guys who really, through their personal experience of their dog and their digestive health issues, and trying to look for solutions to what was going on, and trying to find the right diet, and beginning to understand the impact of the gut microbiome and how that research was evolving. So it kind of started on in that way, and then I came on board about a year ago, just to kind of help with the veterinary science behind the product, to make sure everything that we do is backed up by science, and that it's looking for it's focused on the welfare of the pets that we're helping. So that's been my role over the last year, and then we've done a lot more development and then launched the product around the turn of the year. So we've been sort of operational for about 6 months now, and tested many hundreds of dogs, and really starting to see some interesting data come through.
It's very interesting, isn't it? So as a vet as well, do you think a lot of the problems we're seeing with gut health now are a lot of the commercial dog foods? Because we advocate for fresh feeding, but not everyone can do that, and obviously we are very open about not all kibbles are the same as well. You do get much better dog foods versus terrible ones. So, but do you think a lot of that's a lot of the problem now? The commercial.
It's such a big open question, and it's probably fair to say there is no absolutely rock solid evidence to say that, but we're certainly starting to see indications in the data that dogs fed on different types of food have different microbiomes, populations. And, it does look like dogs fed on raw or fresh or gently cooked foods tend to have healthier, more diverse, better balanced microbiomes than those fed on dry food. So there's kind of hints that, there's something in the microbiome which is related to diet and related to health outcomes. I mean, I think on a broader, bigger picture, we have seen big changes in the way we've fed our dogs over the last 30, 50 years, with the or probably longer than that, with the rise of commercial mass-produced foods. And that really mirrors our own diets. We've gone from a largely home-cooked, fresh diet, although, I'm sure with rose-tinted goggles, it was probably not nearly as healthy, but at least now there are plenty of, not many people go hungry, at least in this country. But, we now rely largely on ultra-processed foods, and that's clearly having an impact on human health. I mean, there's lots of studies showing the link there and how it's the rise in cancer in young people, particularly bowel cancers, is thought to be linked to that. So I think it doesn't take a genius to think, well, we're feeding our dogs largely similar kind of diets.
Yeah.
So there's probably going to be a similar link. And I think the microbiome data we're seeing is starting to back that up. But as a company, Biome9 is very much agnostic to feeding types. As you said, we don't want to lecture people and tell people that everyone, you should feed this way or that way. We want to work with people, how they're feeding their dog. And for a lot of people, despite the potential disadvantages, dried mass-produced kibbles they're very affordable. As you said, there can be good ones and bad ones. And we're just trying to help people choose the best one within their budget and preferences that's going to best suit their dog.
Yeah, and I think we always say, and I think it's important for people to understand, to do feed a fresh diet, whether it be cooked or raw. It isn't the cure. It isn't the answer for everything you do. I think a lot of people still think their dogs, they just think their dogs won't get ill if they just feed the fresh diet, and it's not the case. You're giving them a better chance, maybe at some things that could happen. But
that's quite refreshing to hear that. It's such a polarized debate, isn't it? And there's a lot of very strong opinions on the whole nutrition debate, and raw and kibble, and people saying if you feed this, you're basically killing your dog. It's dog abuse, which is totally overblown. And as you said very, very well, that it's a game of percentages, and by feeding a high quality diet, you're likely to reduce the risks of your dog getting certain conditions and living a long and happy, a healthy life. But perfectly beautifully fed dogs will still get cancer, and terribly fed dogs will live till they're 20. It's the same as everyone's. A lot of it's genetics, and the same as everyone's favorite auntie who lived till 95 smoking 20 cigarettes.
It's always that aunt.
There is.
So, but that's not to diminish the impact of diet. And obviously, I really strongly believe that diet is really important for dogs, and understanding how different diet can affect their microbiome and how that affects so many aspects of the health is really important.
Yeah, I think actually that leads quite well into what you were going to ask about environment, doesn't it?
So obviously we already know that there's a link between stress, environment, and the microbiome. Are you seeing anything in particular with, Biome9 and those links to stress?
I guess that's quite a hard one. I mean, we take a lot of what we call metadata about each dog. So, information about where they live, what they're fed on, their medical history. So we can start to build links between those aspects of the data and the results we see. So, we can draw links, say, with obese dogs or dogs in rural environments versus urban environments. But it does take a long time to get enough data to draw really strong correlations. So in terms of stress, that's such a tricky thing to measure without sort of blood tests and so on. So, it's not something we currently, we don't, I suppose, ask people directly, is your dog very stressed, and look for links. But we do recognize the link between behavioral and sort of, I suppose you call mental health issues in dogs. So anxiety, dogs with stress related conditions, we are starting to see some indications of different microbe populations in those cases. And I think as we get more and more data in, we're going to strengthen those, and we're going to say, actually, yes, dogs with these behavioral conditions which are linked to stress are seeing more health, different microbiomes, and that's likely to cause different health outcomes. So and come to the other point of the environment. I mean, I think that's definitely something we're seeing and are going to see more of is, dogs that live in a very clean, probably urban environment are going to have very different microbiomes to those farm dogs who eat all knows, God knows what, and snout around in the undergrowth, which is, our hypothesis is that's the healthy way for a dog to live, and not the opposite. And that's probably part of the benefit of fresh food is that they are getting more natural bacterial populations and microbial populations from their food, rather than a very sterile product that's coming in a tin or a packet, which doesn't sort of feed the microbiome in the same way.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so are these, obviously it very much, I think, depends on the vet that you see. Obviously we all have different experience with different vets, and like everyone else, everyone's got their own interest, even when they work in a professional industry. But is this test something that you potentially could be able to take the results to your vet?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that, a lot of vets feeding back to us about how useful they find this test, because, from my days in practice, I saw a lot of dogs with intractable gastrointestinal symptoms, just have chronic diarrhea all the time, or just not putting on weight, or just generally being suffering from poor digestive health. And there's a limit to what you can do. You can take fecal samples and look for particular bacteria. You can try medications. You can look at different diets. Try and do exclusion diets and so on. But you're kind of working a bit blind, really, and the success rates don't tend to be that good. So having this other tool in your armory of saying, okay, well, let's put some science behind this. Let's look at what's really in that dog's digestive tract in terms of their population, and seeing things like a massive overgrowth in a species of Clostridia, which is associated with chronic diarrhea and poor health, is really informative. And then looking at how that dog digests certain aspects of their diet, whether it be protein or carbohydrate or fat, and maybe making some amendments to their diet and saying, okay, this dog doesn't digest fat very well, so we're going to find foods which have really accessible fats in, really easily digestible fats that are going to help and hopefully reduce the strain on the digestive tract. So I think it is still early days, because a lot of this, the links between specific outcomes and what's in the microbiome, we're learning all the time. So it's not like do a blood test and find your dog's got a marker for liver disease and we'll give you a liver disease tablet to cure it. It's not that simple, because the microbiome is so complicated. But it's looking at statistical links and going, okay, on average, dogs with this kind of picture, with these symptoms, tend to benefit from this change to their diet or this supplementation. So I guess that's a long-winded answer of saying, yes, it is very useful for vets. And I'd really encourage people who get our test to take the results to their vets and share them with them. And because educating vets is really important for our mission as well, because a lot of vets are not very well educated, don't really understand the microbiome because it's really new. And I think we need to help educate vets along the way as well.
No, that's it's good to know. I mean, even me personally going through, I've got Siberian Huskies, and obviously they can suffer from a magnitude of things with the gut, but I've got one who's suffering with zinc responsive dermatitis at the moment. But she had TPLO surgery in October, was extremely stressed, all the medications she was on, and it just, her whole face after just completely exploded. So we've been doing so much gut work, but I feel like I'm going in blind, which is why for me, this is my next step now, because I'm throwing all these probiotics at her, sort of trying to heal the gut, but actually I don't know what's going on inside it.
No, and it's, I think having, finding out what's going on, I mean, it may, as I said, it's not necessarily a shortcut to transforming what's going on, but at least you've got some data, and then you can look at, well, after 6 months of making these dietary changes or trying different supplements, whatever, has it actually changed things? Has it made a difference? And so I think it is a really useful tool. And if you've got a dog like yours with chronic and really difficult to manage digestive symptoms, it's a no-brainer really that it's worth doing just to understand what's going on inside, because it's such an important part of our dog's health, what goes on in the gut microbiome. There's more microbial cells in there than there are dog cells in the dog's body, and pretty much everything that goes into the dog's that the dog digests and all the nutrients they take in have gone through bacteria first. So it plays a massive role in turning dog food into dog. It's in that interface. Everything goes through bacteria first. So really, when you're thinking about what you're feeding them, you should think about it as bacteria food more than dog food. Because that's what a lot of it is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would something like this help indicate to a vet as well, leaky gut or anything like that?
It can do, because obviously if you've got leaky, we are looking at indications of gut wall health in the populations that we see, because obviously the lining of the gut wall, the bacteria that line the gut wall play a really intrinsic part in preventing things that shouldn't cross the gut wall and get into the the bloodstream. So they're really important for that, and that's been linked to allergies, intolerances, and all sorts, because you get proteins crossing the gut barrier where they shouldn't, and they get into the bloodstream and trigger reactions. So that health is definitely something that's one of the measures that we look at is gut wall health.
Okay.
So that is definitely an important part of the information that our report will give.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you think that it would be good for, I don't know, your bog standard dog that comes along that's not presenting with any issues at all, to actually take this test just as a marker point, like, a starting point, so you know where you're at, and should a problem present later along the line, you've got something to compare it to?
Possibly. I mean, it's very much a snapshot in time. So, there will be changes, quite dynamic changes, even through a day. So if you take a sample of the dog's first poo rather than their third, it will have some differences, probably quite small differences. And then over time, different times of year, different things that are going on with the dog will make changes. So if you've got a dog which is in perfectly rude health and you're not worried about it at all, probably the value of the test is lower, because because the dog is clearly doing well. But you might find that actually, and we've seen this quite a lot with dogs that are apparently doing very well and the owners are very happy with them, but they take the test and they actually find that their gut microbiome is not optimal for health, and they can make some changes and make the dog even healthier and potentially more resilient to future things. So I don't want to sound like I'm here just to sell this test to everyone and everyone's dog should have it, and it's a must-have, because clearly it's not a particularly cheap thing to do, and for a lot of owners it's going to be hard to prioritize that cost. But I think if you want to do everything properly for your dog and really prioritize their long-term health, it's a very good idea to do. Certainly not going to do any harm to get this information, but I think it's probably most valuable for dogs who have some kind of health issues. And it's not just gut health issues. I mean, skin issues, behavioral issues, joint issues, they're all linked to the gut microbiome. So, I think it's definitely useful information there if your dog has any kind of health problem.
Yeah. We had somebody actually ask us, sort of, it could be like, I think some sort of chronic inflammation thing that she's dealing with her dog. And it's, she's giving her dog marshmallow root or tree bark every day at the moment, and it's stopping diarrhea. But when she stops giving it, it instantly comes back. So clearly that's sort of helping some sort of inflammation. So she was sort of thinking maybe something like this would be quite good.
Yes, I mean, marshmallow root is quite an effective digestive aid. So, that's obviously having a positive effect. And, I think there's no particular reason why she couldn't carry on giving that if it's working. But as you said, it's possibly masking something that's going on. And I think the first port of call for nearly all of these problems is diet, because, and it may not be, she may be on what appears to be a wonderful raw diet or whatever kind of food it is, but it may just not be appropriate for that dog. That dog may not be dealing with it. So I think looking at, trying some different diets, and that's where this test can be helpful, because, as well as getting all the data about the bacterial populations, we also provide some dietary recommendations and say, look for a diet that's a bit more like this or a bit more like that. So I think for a dog, that's probably the typical dog we tend to see coming into Biome9 are dogs with that kind of grumbling gastrointestinal problem, which can really benefit from some insight and maybe a change of direction in terms of diet and supplementation.
Okay, it's really good. That's so good to know. You give the recommendations. But Anna, did somebody ask you about grass eating? Which obviously could be so many reasons.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously it could be a multitude of reasons as to why they're eating the grass. But if you do have a dog that is presenting with a lot of grass eating, will the test kind of point in the direction of where you need to go from there? Obviously there's something missing. They're trying to, heal something.
Yeah, it's a really strange one, grass eating, because I think that nobody really knows 100% why dogs eat grass, and from my experience, they tend to eat grass if they've got a bit of a digestive upset, maybe a bit of tummy pain or whatever, and it tends to alleviate that. There's probably an element as well of that sort of unconscious urge to get some more fiber or to get some certain nutrients they're going to get from grass, because it does seem to be a kind of unconscious thing. I mean, my dog will do it every now and then, very rarely, but just occasionally asked to be let out and go and sort of chew some grass, and you think, what's going on there? And you quite often then you say, well, there's a bit of a sloppy stuff comes out the other end. Is that a result of the grass, or is that what she was trying to kind of sort out? So I think it's no one quite knows 100%, and there's probably lots of reasons why dogs will eat grass. But if it is a chronic problem, it's happened quite a lot, it suggests that there's a dietary issue there, and it also suggests something that's going to be flagged up by a microbiome analysis. So I think that would be a very good indication for someone to do a test like this, because it's likely there's some imbalance or something going on internally that this test could shed some light on.
Yeah.
What sort of, after obviously you give breakdown recommendations and things, I know Biome9 have supplements. Do you recommend what supplements would be best? Obviously everyone's got their own personal favorite supplements they might use, or
Yes, so we do have our own range of supplements, and they're not going to be appropriate for every dog. People shouldn't think of that this is a test just designed to sell supplements, because that's not the case at all. I think the most powerful thing we give people is the dietary advice. I mean, that's going to make the biggest difference. But for dogs with more significant microbiome imbalances or problems, we have a range of supplements. We create a plan which is very much personalized to each dog. So we've got a range of 9 supplements, but we give a plan with specific supplements which contain a sort of combination of there's probiotics, there's prebiotics, there's postbiotics, and there's some herbal ingredients in there as well. So combined together, they're designed to address the specific problems we've seen with your dog's microbiome. So, they are something we do recommend, and, we're starting to see some really positive results coming through from dogs who've been on the supplement program. But, again, it's by no means essential that people do that. That if they just want to get a look at what's going on internally and maybe take some heed of our dietary advice, that's a great way to go. But if there's a more significant problem, then the supplementation is there as an option.
I think actually, I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the things I forgot. I did actually want to ask if you could sort of give a bit of a breakdown, because I think a lot of people, and we've said it in the past when we were first learning things, you give things blindly sometimes and don't, or you see other people using things and you think, actually, I don't know why I'm giving this. What's the difference between a pre and a probiotic, and if you should use a prebiotic?
Sure. I mean, so there's pro and postbiotics, and they refer to really different stages of that microbial digestive journey. So prebiotics is food for microbes. So it's basically dietary fiber. So things like inulin, chicory root, are good sources of prebiotics. And so they're the dietary fiber that the bacteria munch up. Probiotics are live bacteria that we can put in the supplement. They get through the stomach. There's some controversy about how many will get through the stomach live and effective, but certainly some enough do to make a difference. So these are live colonies of what we'd call good bacteria, which we then will help repopulate and rebalance the gut microbiome. And postbiotics are things like short chain fatty acids, which are the products of microbial digestion. So they're the kind of things that the bacteria produce and the dog or the human will absorb. So we've got all of those 3 stages, really. We've got the microbes dinner, we've got the microbes themselves, and then we've got the microbes poo coming out the other end, which is what the dog eats. So really, to be effective, you have to provide all 3 of those. And there's, I think there's most exciting probably about the postbiotic element of supplementation at the moment, because that's kind of shortcutting the whole process, but it's saying, okay, we know that the populations in the gut microbe are not producing the right quantities of butyrate or these other short-chain fatty acids, so we can put some of those in. We can put things in there which will replace that, and that will help the function of the gut and what it's doing for the dog.
Yeah. And I suppose the way we sort of talk about a lot how diet isn't going to solve all these problems. I think, would I be right in saying it's the same in terms of doing a test like this, given prebiotics and probiotics? If you're still obviously feeding something that could be causing these issues, or there's something in the environment that's going to be causing these issues, it's not necessarily going to solve it. It might put plaster over it for a while. And then
exactly
things
that.
come back.
I mean, if you're eating McDonald's every day, but you take some probiotic supplements, it's probably going to help. You stop taking probiotics and you're still eating. Other fast food chains are obviously available, but I think that's why I come back to diet being the key to this. So to get the diet right, supplementation can help sort of get your dog from a poor microbiome to a good one over a period of time, and then hopefully at the end of that process, the dietary changes have kicked in and your dog's set on an even keel, and maybe they don't need supplements long term. I mean, some dogs I think will benefit from long term supplementation, much as some humans do, and particularly if they've got a specific issue like joints or skin or the immune system, where the supplements can play a role in that long term that perhaps even a healthy diet isn't going to address.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting, isn't it? Like, they say the gut is the second brain as well, and the fact that a dog with arthritis, actually it would be benefit to treat the gut as well, because it does sort of help with everything, chronic inflammation and.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the gut is, we're starting to understand its role in so many body systems, so it can affect joint health and how the dog can cope with issues of poor joint conformation or poor joint health. I mean, it's not going to, if your dog's got an arthritic knee, sorting their diet out is not going to change the physical, malconformation of that knee and stuff, but it is going to help the dog cope with the arthritic changes and heal where possible. So it is going to play a role. And the immune system is very closely linked to the gut, as is, neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which, affect mood and behavior and all those kind of aspects. So, and skin as well. So all of these things where you think, well, actually, how can the skin be affected by the gut, what's in the gut? But it's what that gut produces in terms of the outputs that the dog absorbs, and neurotransmitters and chemicals, signaling chemicals, which are coming into the dog and affecting all sorts of aspects of the body. And it makes you think about yourself as well. I mean, all these things we're talking about are just as really for us.
We're no different, really, are we? We're just
I mean, we kind of joked in the Biome9 office about running the test on ourselves and seeing how we stack up. Because there's quite a variety on lifestyles and ages and diets, and it would be very interesting, but we haven't quite gone down that route yet.
Well, no, it's right. We've covered that, didn't we, in a post? There's a big thing, especially in the sort of more holistic dog world of feeding. Like, everyone brags about their dog's diet, and then they're behind the scenes. Eating terrible food, struggling, and spending their money on their dog's diet, when actually that's not good. It's not going to help anyone.
He's right. I mean, it's, in a way, maybe it's easier to implement that on your dog than face your own kind of cravings or cravings or whatever. It's in a way, the dog doesn't have a choice whether to have that really tasty kibble or whatever that is a dog equivalent of a fast food meal versus maybe a slightly harder to. It's not really the same, because I think dogs love fresh food, but we impose those choices on our dogs and don't give them a choice generally. Whereas for ourselves, we've got that choice that we have to overcome our cravings and those evolutionary instincts to crave fats and sugars and things that are particularly not good for us. So in a way, it's easier, I think, to implement good habits on our dogs than ourselves.
Absolutely. Just how long does this, if somebody gets the Biome9 test, How long is it from them sending a sample off to getting the results roughly? I know it may vary. But...
Yeah, it does vary. We do the results in batches. They go through a series of processes of sequencing and amplifying the DNA from the bacteria. So it's quite a lengthy process. We've got our own lab that does it in Aberystwyth. So ideally, it's about 5 to 7 days after we receive the sample. But sometimes that varies. I mean, we had a period at the early part of the year where it was longer than that because we had some issues with our lab, but we sorted those out. So it is, I mean, generally, I would say to expect up to a couple of weeks after you pop it in the post box. Within a couple of weeks, you should have your results.
That's brilliant.
That's
brilliant. Any more questions, Anna?
I don't. I think you've answered them all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really, really good. And it's been great to hear your interest in the subject, and hopefully we can help educate people about the power of looking at the microbiome, and just even if just the take-home message is think about what you feed your dog and how it's supporting the microbes in their digestion. That's really what people should be focusing on when they're thinking of diet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, see you again soon. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you
Bye.
later. Bye.
While we share our personal views and experiences with canine health and nutrition, it's important to note our podcast is not a substitute for professional veterinary advice. If you have any concerns or questions about your dog's health or well-being, we strongly recommend seeking guidance from a qualified vet. Every dog is unique and individual circumstances may require specific attention. Our podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Please do not take any information from our podcast as one-to-one nutritional advice. Thanks for tuning in.